right, looks like we are ready to go and live. So welcome everybody to our third, I can't believe it's already our third Reach Out Live program, which is something that we developed out of the Reach Out for Nonprofits program of the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association. For anybody on this webinar who is not familiar with Reach Out, what we do is we provide a series of seminars. We used to do it live in the bar offices, but we pivoted pretty quickly when the shutdown happened as a result of COVID-19 to doing these webinars. We still wanted to make sure that we got important information out to the nonprofit leaders in our community and the attorneys who volunteer to help them. I definitely encourage you to go to our website, which is clemetrobar.org/reach out. We have videos that you can see of the last two Reach Out Lives that we did that focused on nonprofit issues in general, but also the paycheck protection program and on employment law. So check those out. Our focus today, we're going to be talking about nonprofit communications, and we have a wonderful panel of speakers that one of our steering committee members, Alex Campbell, is going to introduce, and we'll kick off the topic in just a minute. But I do encourage you to go to that website. As we do this webinar today, we're going from 10 to 11 o'clock. I strongly encourage you to please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that, you can send us a question. We will toss it to our panelists. We want this very much to be a conversation. So if you have questions on our topic, on something else that is pressing, please do let us know, and we'll make every effort to get to you. If we don't get to your question for whatever reason, or you want to follow up with us, we will be posting my email address at least, and we definitely encourage you to reach out to us if you need any help or any follow-up. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Alex Campbell, longstanding member of our Reach Out Steering Committee. Alex.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for participating. These have been, we put this together on the fly, and I think they've been really helpful, and we hope you think the same. So today's conversation is about communications, nonprofit communications in the times of COVID. And we have a great panel. We have representatives from different parts of the nonprofit community. We've got Nora Jacobs, Senior Vice President of Hennes Communications, Valerie Schumacher, Director of Programs and Services at Arts Cleveland, LeAundra Richardson, Associate of Programs and Marketing at Arts Cleveland, and Jason Weiner from the Donor Relations Officer at the Cleveland Foundation. And what we're going to talk about today, and I'll allow each presenter to introduce themselves more fully and to talk a little bit about what they're seeing and what they're hearing and what they're communicating. But what we're going to talk about today is communications across the spectrum: communication with donors, communication with clients, communication with employees, communication with the general public. Communication is obviously critically important in these times, especially when we're all spread out. So we have called this group from our nonprofit community here in Cleveland, and we really look forward to their insights. And as Jess mentioned, and I'll reiterate, this is intended to be a conversation. And so if you do have any questions, again, each of our presenters will talk about their specific experiences for a few minutes. But if you do have any questions, feel free. This is supposed to be helpful. So if you have a question, go ahead and ask it. We will do our very best. If we don't know the answer, we will find out the answer. So I will start with Valerie. Valerie, take it away.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to virtually see you. Valerie Schumacher, I'm the Director of Programs and Services at Arts Cleveland. I've been there for about 11 years. Arts Cleveland, just as a brief overview, we've been serving arts and culture, the arts and culture community broadly, for about 23 years, almost 25. And we work closely with Cuyahoga Arts and Culture, and I just want to mention them as the public funder for arts and culture in Cuyahoga County. Using this, they receive a percentage of cigarette taxes to distribute them to support arts and cultural activities. I'm here with LeAundra, who we work closely with together, usually in the office, but we've been remote since just before they announced the requirement to stay at home. And so she's going to talk a little bit about what we've done as far as our communications, but part of what we have done and what our role is to hear from the arts and culture community, to hear what the themes are collectively. And what we've heard, we have two calls, one of them with arts and cultural leaders, executive directors, one with artists. And we've heard a lot of concerns, specifically related to this topic, with maintaining staff engagement and working with their donors to make sure it doesn't appear as though they're tone deaf, that they're not trying to discount the important needs of the front line, and balancing those communications with really understanding, though, that these organizations have taken a hard hit. And what we found is one of the best results, or the best ways to kind of get to that, is with the data. We do a lot of research, and we work with the Americans for the Arts, which is a national organization, and they've been doing a lot of the national research. And nationally, arts entertainment and I believe rec centers are included in there, are, I think, the second most affected, next to the restaurant industries, as far as unemployment and taking the hardest hit as the most affected by these closures. So sharing that there's a need, we're also, arts and culture is also one of the lowest as far as receiving funding from the PPP programming, or at least the first round. I don't have the data from the second round. So it's just some really stark numbers, and I'm sure you all have those for your industries as well. And those are, I think, the most effective at sharing. While there is important needs in all sectors and all sort of, what's the word? All nonprofits, really, that there are issues that need to be resolved in all sectors as well. So lately, I just briefly want to touch on where the conversations have led recently, and it's no surprise, and I want to acknowledge a lot of the unrest that's happening. We were, prior to the death of George, and I'm failing on his last name just because I have you all listening to me, that we were already heading towards this question of racial equity in the arts, and really understanding what kinds of things we can do as this economy has already taken a hit, to reinvigorate and redesign what the nonprofit sector looks like. And so we're really embracing that conversation. And I'll just make a note. We posted something on Facebook last night that said we stand with the people who are fighting for a more just society. And we immediately had someone jump on and say, all lives matter. And, so we shared our perspective very with the research that we have and the information that we have. And it wasn't political. It wasn't sort of divisive. It was really, here's the information. And we found that using Facebook, a lot of people really, we didn't have to say a lot. A lot of people were right in there and wanted to join that conversation and to respond to him directly. And I think it's important, as we think about all of this, is allowing communications not only to happen on that one-on-one level and communications out, but to allow people to communicate amongst each other and to communicate with us using the tools that we have. So I just wanted to share that, because that was just a recent development, and I was just this morning kind of like looking to see where it had gone. And we had actually learned that the city of Cleveland had just done some discussion around having racial disparity becoming a public health crisis. So sorry, I feel like I'm taking up my time, but it's been a really interesting 24 hours. So thank you. And I'm going to hand it over to LeAundra, who's been supporting on making sure that a lot of these things actually get done and get out and happen. So
thanks, Valerie. Hi, everyone. My name is LeAundra Richardson, and I am the Associate of Programs and Marketing at Arts Cleveland. I have been at Arts Cleveland for a little over 6 years, and yeah, I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the specifics in communication that we do. So I'm going to start by saying, just with the work that we've been doing around COVID-19, we've focused a lot on being consistent. We have been sending out emails every week and making sure that these emails contain important information and resources, and that none of these emails are about promoting ourselves, but instead about promoting the resources we have found and are providing, and just informing people the best that we can. That's just our main focus. In that, we have different team members focus on each email so no one gets burned out in preparing emails. And so I'm going to start by saying that I prepare the weekly Creative Compass email, which goes out every Monday. And this is our email where we share just different artist opportunities. And this includes workshops and classes, employment opportunities, calls for artists, audition opportunities, and grants, which is a section that we've really focused on in this time, just because there have been so many grants created around COVID-19 for artists and arts and culture organizations. And then we also share information in that email about the Wednesday calls, the Wednesday artist calls that Valerie mentioned earlier. We have those weekly. And so we send this email out Monday, and then those calls are on Wednesdays. And our colleague, Meg Matko, she sends out a follow-up email a little bit later in the week, typically Fridays, just a follow-up email to these artist calls each week, just thanking people for coming and then sharing resources and information that was mentioned during those calls. And then we have our arts executive director call, which Valerie also mentioned, and this is Wednesdays, and typically she sends out an email, kind of just a reminder that that's coming up. She sends that email to arts executive directors, and then she later in the week follows that up with another email just with resources that were mentioned and things like that. And so these emails have been just full of great information for people, and we have really focused on just staying consistent with them, and people have been just receiving them every week, and I think that's been really helpful and just bringing people to the calls and keeping them interested in the work that we're doing at this time. Another thing I'm going to mention is that we have been really consistent with social media posts. We share relevant information on our social media, Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, 2 to 3 times a day typically. And we've noticed just in doing that, people have been more engaged and in the information that we've been sharing. And we have an intern named Sammy who's been mainly taking over that piece of work, but we all contribute in different ways to our social media pages. And in terms of growth, we've noticed growth in other areas of our work as well, as we have remained consistent. Our weekly calls have grown so much. And the first week of our weekly artist calls, we had maybe a maximum of 5 people attend. But as we continued to be consistent with those calls and just do them on a weekly basis, we noticed just an increase over time. And as we've just brought different speakers in and just different people in that artists can relate to and learn from, we've watched these calls grow from, like I said, maybe 5 people to now 30 to 35 people each week. And so that has been really, we've really seen such a difference and a growth in those just by remaining consistent. And we believe these calls have really just provided a sense of stability for the people who come in a time when things are really unstable. Just knowing Wednesdays at noon or Wednesdays at 9 a.m. I can come to this call and I'll, have support and people who are in the same position that I'm in and dealing with the same things that I'm dealing with, people who really understand. And so we think these have just provided a sense of stability and just staying on schedule. And so we just think this work's been really important, and we've really enjoyed doing it and enjoyed seeing the response to it, and people have been supportive. And so it's been just really great.
Great, thank you, LeAundra. So next I'll turn it to Nora to talk about some of the work. Nora's a communication specialist, so couldn't ask for a better person for this discussion.
Sure, happy to do that. Again, I'm Nora Jacobs, Senior Vice President at Hennes Communications in Cleveland. We specialize, we're one of the few firms in the country actually specialize exclusively in crisis communications, crisis planning, media training. We also do a lot of issues management. But one thing we're not as well recognized for is just helping clients communicate in complex situations. And I think everybody would agree that probably the last few months have been some of the most challenging and complex communications anybody's had to deal with. Since early March, we've been working with clients as they've worked through this COVID situation. It began helping them figure out how they were going to tell people that they were closing down, what precautions they were taking to keep their employees safe, their customers or clients, whoever. We moved on from there to strategize with them how to communicate positive cases when those started to occur. Moved on, unfortunately, as clients began to have to deal with layoffs and furloughs. How did they communicate that? We've had some clients with fatalities, with deaths, and had to negotiate the really tricky space of how do you protect privacy, deal with HIPAA, at the same time that you're trying to be transparent and communicate forthrightly with your stakeholders. Some of our clients have been in the media spotlight, social media as well, and we've been helping them address that and figure out a strategy to end up on the right side of that situation. And now, of course, we're pivoting to reopening. A number of our clients already are open, and some, like I imagine some of you on the call today, are just getting into that process as the governor kind of phases everything in. Throughout this whole process, we've consistently advised our clients to do three things. Communicate frequently, and I think you've heard that from LeAundra. She gave a great case study on how to communicate pretty frequently. Transparently, tell as much as you can tell about the situation to as many stakeholders as possible. And then broadly, use all the tools and platforms that you can to get the word out, because we're finding that not all of your stakeholders are going to be reading one thing or receiving it in one way. So getting the message out often and as many ways as possible has been really important. As we move into the reopening, we're really seeing two kind of conflicting emotions that clients are having to deal with. First, everybody is really eager to get back to kind of what will be called business as usual for the foreseeable future, although it won't be what we were used to before. So they want to get back to work. They want to get back and start using your services. They want to have facilities open, arts organizations, they want to go there. But at the same time, we're seeing a lot of nervousness. People are apprehensive. They want to use services, they want to go out, they want to get re-engaged, but they're still concerned about their health. So there are two things really that people are having to deal with simultaneously with their communications. Absolutely the overriding concern right now is safety. Your staff and your employees want to know that they're going to be coming back, if they're going to be physically in the environment. What are you doing to make their work environment safe? And if you're opening up your facilities, how are your visitors, your clients, your patients, your visitors, whoever it is, how are they going to be protected? So we're counseling clients to take a pretty thorough and thoughtful approach to communicating what they're doing. What cleaning are you putting in place? What social distancing processes are you implementing? Just what are you doing to change the work environment so that that your customers, your stakeholders know that you care and you're taking the steps to protect them. We're also advising clients to be kind of prepared for some unhappiness when they reopen. Things are going to be different. So as much as you can do in advance to prepare people for that difference, I think the less you'll have to deal with on-site unhappiness. Are your services going to be curtailed? Are some going to be suspended? Are you going to only allow a certain number of people into your facility if you're actually having one? What about employees? How are things going to be different for them? I mean, I've read, recommendations that you shut down lunchrooms. So, there are just kind of all kinds of things to prepare people for, so that if they know what it is coming in advance, you're going to have a lot less frustration on your hands if they know what they're getting into. In fact, some clients are even thinking about doing a pre-opening video just to show what their place is going to be like and the precautions they're taking, cleaning they're doing, how they're rearranging things, so that people know what they're getting into. But, people are still going to be kind of upset by the differences. They're going to be disappointed and frustrated. So we're saying, acknowledge that, acknowledge the frustration, know that you are sharing it. Apologize for inconvenience that people are going to be going to, and ask them to forgive you for it, but make them understand you're doing it to protect them. So as much as you can communicate those things, kind of set the stage, set the expectations. I think that's helpful. We are giving some specific recommendations to clients, that just a list of things that we're recommending they consider right now. First of all, again, just let people know what they're going to get into, what to expect, and do that right now if you haven't done it already. Boards and donors have come up in this conversation today, and we're suggesting that you remember your board members and your donors, because those are often the people the community recognizes and sees as your public face. So you want to arm them with the information about what you're doing. You may have already done that, maybe not donors, but if you have a big donor, they probably have some recognition in the community, and they may get asked, what are they doing over there? We'll arm them with that information in advance so that they can speak on your behalf and be articulate about it. You don't want one of your board members out, in the neighborhood, and they don't know what to say. That's never helpful, but especially in this situation. Use them as extensions of your communications and help them. And also with staff, get them ready. If you have people coming on site, they're going to get questions. They're maybe going to get complaints. If you're still serving remotely, they're going to get calls. And so take some time right now, your team, to brainstorm that. What are the questions you're likely to get? What are the answers? And then help your staff with that. Arm them right now so that they're prepared as well. And figure out too, designate someone that your staff can go to help them with really tough questions. Don't expect your person who answers the phone to handle irate callers. Designate somebody that they can talk to, and make sure the people who answer your phones know who that is, so that they aren't put in that spot. Think about communications on site. If you're going to have people coming on site to your facilities, your offices, whatever. Signage, reinforcing what you've already told them in advance, why you're doing it. If you're only letting a certain number of people into your facilities that are offices or site at any given time, make sure, you've all seen it at retail, they're already doing it. So I think it's a good model for this community to take a look at as well. It just reinforces why you're doing it and reminds people that you're going to protect them. Prepare for some outrage. If you are the type of organization that's going to be requiring masks in particular, we've all seen that that's a real flashpoint. Prepare for that and make sure your staff is ready to deal with that type of outrage. And how would they deal with someone who confronts them with an iPhone and tapes them? Do some thinking about that sort of thing if that's part of your protocol for reopening. We've already talked about this, but use as many tools as you can to get the word out, and keep communicating once you're back open. But if you aren't using it right now, I highly recommend taking a good look at your website and making sure all your, excuse me, all your reopening plans are on your website. Because that's the first place people are going to look. And it also makes it easier for all of you because you can refer people to your website. Say, everything about a reopening is on our website. Here's the link. Makes it easier for you. You can use it. You link from social media. Use your platforms there to drive people and keep it up to date. Please keep it up to date. If you're going to use it, make sure it's accurate and current. If your hours are different than what's on your website, it's bad news. So make sure somebody's on top of that. And then finally, and I'll just turn it over, make sure your communications also have some gratitude in them. Thank people, especially your staff. Your staff has had some hard times. They've been working remotely. Maybe there was a furlough, but they're coming back, and you want to let them know you appreciate what they've been through and that you're glad to have them back. And the same for your clients and your patients, your customers, whoever, your visitors. Let them know you're glad to have them back and welcome them. So don't forget to be have that gratitude in there too. So that's just kind of some overall thoughts on how we've been approaching it, and I'll be glad to take some questions later.
Great, thank you, Nora. And we've gotten 2 specific questions, which I will toss to the group as a whole after Jason gives his introduction. So Jason is with the Cleveland Foundation, and he can speak from the perspective of a community funder about these issues. So Jason.
Thank you, Alex. Thanks, everyone. It's a real honor to be a part of this panel with Nora and Val and LeAundra, and I appreciate Jessica and Alex's expert moderation here. And I've been told that my volume is a little low, so if that pans out, somebody just definitely let me know, and I'll yell louder. Thank you. So my name's Jason Weiner. I'm a donor relations advisor with the Cleveland Foundation, where I've been for just about 3 years. I was taking lots of notes, Nora, to bring back to the foundation, but also really happy to say that we've done a lot of what you've been talking about internally, and I think that's a really important point. And I want to talk a little bit about the kinds of resources that the foundation can bring to the community when it comes to communication. We're obviously a grant-making organization as a community foundation, but we also have as a part of our mission to be a good steward of resources and to be a thought partner and have a seat at the table in the community. So there are a lot of resources and conversations that we can have with our nonprofit community at times like this, more critical than ever. So as I said, I've been with the foundation about 3 years. I do have about a 15-year career working in fundraising and development in Northeast Ohio, working with arts and culture organizations as well as human services organizations. As a donor relations advisor, and bear with me as I give the sort of background as to how I'm situated in the foundation here. So as a donor relations advisor, I do 2 primary things. I work with individuals to facilitate their personal philanthropy. And most of those individuals use what we call a donor advised fund. And in that relationship, I'm working closely with donors to provide expertise about the nonprofit community and the work that you're doing to help guide effective grant making for donors. We collaborate with our gift planning team to advise and facilitate planned gifts. We also provide multi-generational and family planning services to donors and their families to help inform the conversation, as we are, at the precipice here of an unprecedented transfer of wealth from one generation to the next. And we also work with donors to establish funds that can impact the causes that they care about in perpetuity. So after a donor and all the advisors on that fund are passed away or otherwise unavailable for grant making, they can continue to have the impact that they wish to have. So that's one area, working with donors and communicating with them regularly about the nonprofit community and their own philanthropy. I also work with nonprofit organizations to focus on building long-term sustainability through our organizational fund partnership program. So this is a program where we focus on long-term investment strategies for nonprofits, plan giving, program development and support, as well as back office administration and support for a range of gifts, to accept a range of gifts from simple to more complex. We also provide resources to support promotion and marketing of your fund, and some education and networking opportunities to help build knowledge and connections to information and to individuals who can help support those short and long-term resource development needs that our nonprofit community has. So our donor advised funds and our organizational fund partners are assigned someone like me, a donor relations advisor, to help them to navigate the foundation and the benefits of the programs. So just to give you that sort of context of what my day-to-day looks like and who I'm working with every day. So like many folks on this call, I've also been attending lots of webinars to gain a broad understanding of the best ways to think about this complex situation that we're finding ourselves in now. But I'm also communicating on a daily basis with our donors and with the organizations that I work with and are part of the portfolio of organizations that I serve. And I wanted to just share a little bit about what I'm seeing and the kinds of things that I'm hearing for you. So certainly fundraising, the first thing I want to say is fundraising is critical. Chances are that your need for contributed revenue has increased. And while it might be appropriate to rethink like a capital campaign or capital strategy right now, you should absolutely continue to press forward with your appeals, your donor meetings, and your efforts to identify new donors. You know, a generous donor is an educated and an engaged donor. And your donors want to hear from you, whether they're your institutional partners or your individual supporters. I want to echo, I think what everyone's been saying. I think Nora said frequently, transparently, and broadly communicate. I can't underscore that enough, and agree wholeheartedly with that. Do what you need to do. Stay connected, be honest and transparent with your donors about where you are, about what you need, and about what your plans are to move forward. Donors want to help. I have conversations regularly. I'll get phone calls from individuals who have donor advised funds, and it's not uncommon, especially in the past 12 or 13 weeks, to have conversations with someone who says, you know, I usually support my alma mater and my church and the food bank, but I know that there's a broader need right now. Help me understand how I can have a greater impact with my donor advised fund. And in fact, when I hang up from this call today, I have a list of 2 or 3 donors who I'm working with today to help them explore that space and direct some grant making from their funds. So whether they're your donors or donors who are not your donors yet, the interest is there. So reach out by phone, by email, text, traditional mail, whatever it is that you know about your donors and how they like to be communicated. And I think double down on that, on those strategies right now. But, you know, I think a bigger picture point is that your donors are people you have relationships with, right? So that's kind of fundraising 101 and donor relations 101, is that these are relationships that you have, not transactional opportunities. So your program may be structured in a way that your attention is focused, you know, arguably appropriately so, more so on the donors who are giving at higher levels, and the donors who are giving at lower levels don't get as much personalized attention. Understandable for sure, but there's only so many hours in the day, and I understand that organizations vary in their capacity to be responsive to every single donor. So that's a given, absolutely. But these are relationships, and when you have the opportunity to be face-to-face with a donor, listen to how they're doing. Ask them how they're doing. Ask them about where they are with COVID-19. Ask them where they are with the impact of recent protests and demonstrations that are going on, and listen to what they have to say. One of the projects, you know, the foundation staff is entirely working from home, and we have been, like many of you, since mid-March. And one of the projects that we've been working on is a phone call to every single donor of the Cleveland Foundation. And we're having these conversations. And, I think going into it, we thought, oh, it'll just be a quick touch base. But my average phone call length has been about 30 minutes with each donor, having conversations. So it's taking a little bit longer than we thought, but that's not a bad thing because, we're all reminded, as are our donors, that this is a relationship that we are invested in and that we care about. So empathize with them, thank them, share something personal about yourself. Make a genuine connection, with your donors while you're educating them and listening to them about, what's going on at your organization and their lives. Tell stories, share impact, recognize that your donors are a part of your organization's community. I think another important point that Nora made that I want to underscore is that donors are your advocates. Donors, staff, volunteers, and board members are your advocates. They are folks who are going to represent you in the community, whether you like it or not, and whether you know it or not. So best to prepare each of those constituency groups with honest, transparent, accurate information about where you are and about what it is that you need. Don't think that if you're not an organization that's functioning on the front lines of the crisis and serving the most vulnerable populations right now, chances are your organization and all of our organizations have been impacted by the pandemic. And if our abilities to deliver our mission have been compromised, or our need to restructure our service delivery models to adjust to emerging needs and norms, that's an impact, and that's something to communicate with folks as well. Think about virtual communication, for example. I think that in many nonprofit organizations in our community that 6 months ago, like me, probably would have really shied away from a forum like this, prefer a face-to-face opportunity. But now we are in an environment where our capacity has been built, our training has been done, we have the infrastructure to support meetings and interactions and service delivery, utilizing platforms like the one we're on now and other similar ones to them. That's something that is not going to go away. So I think donors are interested in, and your constituencies are interested in knowing about how is this going to be leveraged into the future and into support for the future, into what you're doing. One thing a lot of people ask me as a donor relations advisor is about how do I connect with donor advised funds at the Cleveland Foundation. So, while I would love it if everyone could give me their email address and I could match you all up and introduce donors to you and share contact information, I can't do that. And but what I can do, and what I think is really important when it comes to communication, is to encourage you, if you don't already, to have a concise document that is ready that you can share with donors and potential donors that details your priorities at this time. I think we all call it the old one-pager, but something like this can facilitate communication with your donors' networks. And, like I said, that's what I share with my colleagues at the foundation. So where I work with about 150 donor advised funds, I have 3 colleagues on my team who have the same size portfolio and are working with those folks. So when we are aware of a need that you have, if we have something that's concise that communicates what that need is and what the issues are and the challenges are and the solutions are, if I can communicate that in a quick and concise way with our donors, then that's a positive thing. And then one-pagers can be edited into social media content, blog posts, written correspondence with other donors, so on. Just a couple more things I want to point out too. In terms of communicating with your donors, whether or not you're ready to talk with your donors about a variety of gifts that you can accept as an organization. So gifts of stock, IRA distributions, plan gifts. You know, the CARES Act has changed some previous restrictions around giving. So, you know, where in 2020, where the limitation of 60% of AGI has been raised to 100% for cash gifts to public charities. For corporations, that's been raised from 10% to 25% of AGI. You know, the CARES Act also allowed for a $300 above the line income tax deduction to gifts for charitable organizations this year. Gifts from donor advised funds are increasing nationally, and that's holding true at the Cleveland Foundation as well. Just in March and April, we've seen a 39% increase in gifts from donor advised funds over that same period of time in 2019. So these are actively utilized ways of giving for donors. People with IRAs and who are over 70.5 years old can give $100,000 directly from their IRA to a charity, not to a donor advised fund, but directly into the community to a nonprofit organization. Even though this year we know that RMDs are not required, but that is still an option. Donors can roll those dollars directly over into your organization. Options like charitable gift annuities can provide streams of income to a donor who wants to support a charity. And you can talk with your donors and their legal and financial advisors or staff at the Cleveland Foundation about, you know, naming your organization in their will or as a beneficiary in a life insurance policy or a retirement account, something along those lines. So there's a variety of options that you can position yourself in a way to have those conversations with your donors in thinking about how you're doing, what you're doing, how they're doing, but also ways that you can accept contributions and gifts from your donors to think about the short and long-term needs of your organization. And we at the foundation have a lot of resources, as I mentioned at the beginning, grant making and beyond, that can provide some assistance. So I encourage you to get in touch with me, and we can talk about, you know, what your needs are. And if you want to know more about what's happening at the foundation, you can sign up for our newsletter and tap into our social media feeds to stay in touch. And you can see all of that on our webpage, clevelandfoundation.org. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jason. So thank you everyone for the helpful insight from your various perspectives. So we have gotten a couple of specific questions. These first questions, I think probably most appropriately for Val and LeAundra. Question is, as a theater, we're in the business of people gathering. And we're struggling like restaurants are, maybe even more so, and we're probably going to be the last to open. Any specific feedback to that specific industry? Val, LeAundra, either one of you have anything to add in that?
Yeah, it's not the first time we've heard that question, and unfortunately, we don't have the answer. I think the learning from the restaurants, learning from venues, I think is important. I know Cleveland is going to be, and LeAundra can speak to this, one of the sites for the Reopening Every Venue Safely initiative. This is a national organization that's for music venues, but I think it has some applicability to theaters. And it's a question of not only, you know, letting audiences come in at a more limited capacity, which is often not financially feasible, but also asking those audiences who may not feel comfortable being in that setting to come. And so you don't know what the demand for those activities are going to be. And so it's a really tough question. And unfortunately, I don't have the answer directly, but it is something that we are exploring as a service organization. We're looking into nationally what the models are that people are approaching, and continuing. And I think going back to what I said previously, to help sort of bridge some of those expenses, really sharing the data and explaining how important that earned revenue was to your organization, really communicating with the people who really care about that theater, about your theater, and really sharing how this has impacted your work, how this has impacted the actors who you hire, how it's impacted everyone from top to bottom in the organization. And then maintaining the communication with other theaters and really learning from one another. That's the closest to an answer I can provide.
Yeah, and I wanted to add too, I was on the call yesterday with some local music clubs, the Reopen Every Venue Safely, and just what I heard, some of them are kind of thinking about doing is opening their venues, obviously with social distancing, but then also having a live stream virtual kind of element to it as well, and selling tickets that way, maybe at a cheaper price or something like that, but just so the people who bought tickets or whatever for the performance can still attend, and they can choose how they would like to attend. So that's kind of just what I have to offer for that.
Great, thank you. Jason, another question from the same questioner actually. You mentioned this one pager. Should that one pager explicitly reference COVID and COVID response?
Well, to that I would say, I think, it's hard to see how COVID has not impacted everything that we're doing. I think, the purpose of a one-page document need statement like this is to communicate, a specific and greatest need at the time. So, I feel like, there's whatever organization you would be writing about, whatever your primary need is at that time, I would say that's what it needs to focus on. And if that need has been impacted by COVID, then talk about that. I think it's a great way to get into a little bit of depth to tell a story about what's happened, why that need's important. And, particularly if it is a COVID related need, then don't exclude it at all.
Great, thank you. So again, if anyone on the call has questions, feel free to ask. I have a question. I'll ask it to you, Nora. So as things have gotten very polarized, including issues related to mask wearing and things like that, and we're seeing in the retail context that the frontline retail workers are being forced to field those kinds of difficult debates. For the nonprofits, especially those that will have clients that come into the office or come into the center or whatever the case is, do you have any suggestions for? I guess my question is, do you have any suggestions for de-escalation communication efforts, knowing unfortunately that escalation seems to be the word of the day?
Right. Well, first, again, let people know in advance what the expectation is. If you're not going to treat someone or serve them or meet with them or whatever without a mask, you really need to make that pretty clear up front in multiple ways and multiple times so that people don't show up surprised that that's the expectation. And also, you should be pretty clear up front, I think, on what the consequences are. That they can't be served, that they won't be able to enter the facility, whatever it is. And then again, that should be posted pretty prominently right at the entrance. So before they even walk in the door, they know what the situation is. But I do again think that the frontline people, if you're a security guard or a receptionist, don't put that burden solely on them. If the situation is escalating, you need to have someone designated higher up or, a specialist who can intercede and try and de-escalate the situation. And they need to go through even some mini training, I think, to prepare them if they haven't already for dealing with difficult people. I mean, you have people, that are mad about a variety of things. This isn't the first thing that people get mad about. So if you can help someone on staff or a couple people on staff be prepared to intervene so that the person who is encountering them at first isn't responsible for taking care of the situation. You know, and if you need to, you think about how security is going to handle somebody like that, so that they can get them off the premises. If they just refuse to go, you know, abide by the rules, say, I'm sorry. And again, your language, you know, I'm really sorry, we're not going to be able to help you today because, and we're doing this to protect our workers, and we're doing it to protect our other clients. And we're sorry, we'll be happy to see you again, but you need to comply with our rules. If you don't have a mask, we'll give you one. And just keep repeating those messages. We're sorry, we understand, but this is the situation. You know, but be prepared for it. Just don't somebody be surprised.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Another question, this is anybody feel free to answer, and I'll paraphrase slightly, but the question has to do again with anger about, this is specifically with respect to George Floyd's death and the protests, and feeling a strong desire to make a statement as an organization, a statement of solidarity, a statement of anger, a statement of whatever the case may be. And you know, a lot of the organizations, especially on this call, are smaller organizations that have limited marketing budgets, limited communications budgets. And so any tips, tricks as to that burning desire to make a statement, but also to be careful and, you know, to not be overly alienating of law enforcement or other groups, but again, wanting to make a statement, not wanting to stay quiet, but wanting to thread that needle, which we all know is difficult. But any tips on that would be helpful.
Well, I would, you know, unless your strategy is to really become a lightning rod on this and, you know, be on social media and getting attacked and condemned, I think carefully about how you approach this and take an approach that more commends the people who are doing things right than condemning the ones that are doing it wrong. In the short term, you want to speak out against violence and all that, but who are the parties that are doing it the right way, and support them and use them as an example rather than maybe attacking the ones that are doing it wrong. There are plenty of people who are going to be taking people on that are doing it wrong. If you're a small organization and you want to speak up, but you don't want to be the center of attention, you might want to think about doing that balance. Some initial thoughts.
Val, LeAundra, Jason, anything else on that issue? I know it's a big one.
Well, I think I'd say, you know, I think it's important to call out and condemn injustice where you see it. I agree you have to balance how capable, what the capacity is to handle pushback and blowback. But, you know, if there's a time to take a stand on something, it's probably now. But at the same time, I would say that you don't need to reinvent the wheel either. I mean, there are lots of examples out there, as Nora pointed. I think you can look at lots of statements. The Cleveland Foundation, our president, CEO Ron Richards, made a public statement, as have many other leaders at organizations who needed to take the same things into consideration. And I think that you can look and do your own analysis and, you know, cut and paste and you know, sort of blend and give your own voice into a statement. And then, you know, I did see that question come through. And one thought I had was, if you are, you know, looking, what do I want to say here? So if there's, for example, you know, if it's a statement about, you know, if you're a community organization, if you're working, you know, embedded in a neighborhood, and part of your, the successful deploying of your mission is about relationships with institutions that are in the firing line right now, or being heavily criticized. You know, I wonder if there's a way to partner with some of those organizations to think about a statement together. So, for example, if you're at a neighborhood center and, you know, you are concerned about the activity of police, but your relationship with the leadership, police leadership and police officers in that particular district where you're located, you know, is there a way to dialogue about how to handle your concerns, about, wanting to be critical, but not wanting to come off as a lightning rod. So it was just a thought.
Great, thank you. And I will add one just legal note for the 501c3s, which I assume most of not everyone on the call that describes. So just a note about legislative advocacy for 501c3s. Okay, to a point. When it steers into what we call electioneering activity, so advocacy for or against a candidate for political office, that is not permissible for a 501c3. So just be careful when you're making statements. Also, that you're certainly welcome to make statements in your personal capacity and encouraged to do so. But if you are making a statement on behalf of your organization, make sure you steer clear of direct communications regarding elect Donald Trump or don't elect Donald Trump. That is impermissible communication for a 501c3. So if you have, there's lots of good materials, and actually later in the summer we will be having a reach out seminar, perhaps in person, maybe not, but we will have a reach out seminar specifically on that topic. The whole presentation will be on campaign season communication issues for nonprofits, but here we are, and I just wanted to make that note. So we're also coming up against the end of our hour, and I don't see any open questions. I'll talk for another minute or so. If we have any other questions, feel free to ask them using the chat function. But assuming that we don't have any further questions, I want to thank our panelists. Let's see, is this a question or a? Nope. So I want to thank our panelists, and to LeAundra, to Val, to Nora, to Jason. Jess, thanks for putting it together. I hope this has been helpful. I know these are difficult issues and ever evolving. And if we had this presentation last week, we wouldn't have covered some of the issues that we covered today. So it's, there are further questions. Jess will send out ways to communicate with all of us. We'd be happy to talk through these issues with you. And again, as I said in the very beginning, if we don't know the answer, we can try to point you to somebody who can help you find that answer. So with that said, I appreciate everybody joining us. Jess, do you have any closing words for us?
No, I would just say I'm going to type in my email address right here in the chat function there for everybody. I definitely encourage you, if you are not already on our reach out mailing list, email me to let me know that you'd like to be added so that we can let you know when upcoming seminars are going to be happening. We are going to be taking a break over the next month for Reach Out Live, barring anything emergency coming out that we feel that nonprofits really need to hear right away. But we will definitely have more seminars, as Alex said, in the fall. We look forward to seeing you then. And another huge thank you to our panelists for joining us. And thank you for everybody for participating and watching. And we will see you next time.
All right.
And also, thank you for moderating, Alex. Of course, can't leave you out. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.